She thought my driveway was her personal parking lot. Big mistake. When I came home and found her BMW blocking my garage, I didn't get mad, I got even. 12 hours later, she was begging me to let her car out of the brick fortress I'd built around it. Sometimes the best revenge is served cold, hard, and completely legal. Before you watch full story, comment down from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe. I pulled into my street after a brutal 14-hour shift at the construction site, my truck caked with mud and my body running on nothing but energy drinks and determination. All I wanted was to park in my own garage and collapse on my couch. But as I turned the corner, I saw it. A shiny silver BMW sitting pretty in the middle of my driveway like it owned the place. Not just parked. Planted. Like someone had decided my private property was suddenly public parking. I sat there for a moment, engine idling, staring at this automotive audacity. The BMW had California plates and one of those pretentious, blessed bumper stickers. But what really got my blood boiling was the little pink note tucked under my windshield wiper. I got out and grabbed it. Written in perfect cursive handwriting, "Thanks for letting us use your driveway. The HOA parking was full. We'll move it tonight. Your considerate neighbors, the Hendersons." Red heart. Considerate neighbors. Right. The Hendersons. I knew exactly who they were, the new family that had moved in 3 houses down. More specifically, I knew her. Rebecca Henderson, self-appointed HOA social coordinator and the kind of woman who treated neighborhood rules like friendly suggestions that applied to everyone except her. I'd only met her once at the forced HOA welcome meeting they'd thrown for new residents. She'd introduced herself by immediately complaining about how the community lacked proper organization and suggesting we needed better systems for resource sharing. Translation: she wanted to use everyone else's stuff without asking. But this crossed every line imaginable. I walked around the BMW taking photos from every angle. The car was parked diagonally, taking up my entire driveway. I couldn't access my garage. Hell, I could barely get my truck past it to park on the street. That's when I noticed the real problem. There were muddy footprints leading from the BMW across my lawn to the sidewalk. Not only had she used my driveway without permission, but she'd walked across my freshly seeded grass like it was a public walkway. I pulled out my phone and called the non-emergency police line. Officer Martinez speaking. "Hi, I'd like to report a vehicle trespassing on my private property. Is the vehicle blocking your access to the street?" "No, but it's blocking my garage and parked in my private driveway without permission." "Sir, unless it's blocking a public right-of-way or you have clear, no parking signage, this would be considered a civil matter. You'd need to contact the vehicle owner directly." I thanked him and hung up, frustration building. So the law wouldn't help me unless I had signs. Fine. I'd handle this the construction worker way, with tools, planning, and just enough creativity to make my point crystal clear. I walked to my garage and pulled out my measuring tape. The BMW was about 15 feet long and 6 feet wide. My driveway was 20 feet wide and 30 feet deep. Plenty of room for what I had in mind. See, most people don't know this, but I don't just work construction. I own a small masonry business on the side. I had about 200 surplus bricks sitting in my backyard from a canceled project, plus all the tools I'd need. And thanks to Rebecca's little stunt, I now had the perfect motivation to put them to use. I spent the next hour planning. The beauty of my idea was its simplicity. I wouldn't touch her car, damage anything, or break any laws. I'd simply create a decorative brick border around my driveway that happened to surround her vehicle. Completely legal landscaping on my own property. Around 6 p.m. I walked over to the Henderson house. Rebecca answered the door wearing yoga pants and a wine glass, clearly in the middle of what looked like a dinner party. I could hear laughter and conversation flowing from inside. "Oh, hi," she said with that fake bright smile people use when they know they've done something wrong. "You must be Jake from down the street. I left you a note about—" "Yeah, about that," I interrupted. "Your car is in my driveway. I need it moved." Her smile faltered slightly. "Oh well, we were just borrowing it for a few hours. The HOA parking area was completely full, and I thought since you weren't home." "You thought wrong. It's my private driveway. I need it moved now." She glanced back into the house, then stepped outside and lowered her voice. "Look, I understand you're upset, but we have guests over. Could we possibly move it in the morning? It's really not hurting anything." Not hurting anything. This woman had some serious audacity. "No," I said firmly. "Move it now or I'll have it towed." "Towed?" She laughed, actually laughed. "That seems a bit extreme, don't you think? We're neighbors. We should be helping each other out." Helping each other out would be asking permission before using someone else's property. She rolled her eyes. Fine, whatever. Brad has the keys and he's had a few glasses of wine. We'll move it first thing in the morning, I promise. With that, she went back inside and closed the door. Through the window, I could see her rejoining her party, gesticulating as she told her guests about the difficult neighbor, who was being unreasonable about a simple parking situation. That's when I knew exactly what I had to do. I spent the rest of the evening preparing. First, I called my buddy Carlos, who owned a small landscaping company. Jake. What's up, man? Carlos, I need a favor. You still have that pallet of decorative edging bricks from the Martinez job? Yeah, they're just sitting in my yard. Why? I need to borrow them for about 12 hours. I'll bring them back tomorrow night. Okay. What's this about? Let's just say I'm doing some emergency landscaping. Carlos laughed. Emergency landscaping. That's a new one. Sure, man. I'll drop them off tonight. Next, I called my neighbor Jim, a retired electrician who loved a good story almost as much as he loved causing harmless trouble. Jim, remember how you always said if anyone ever messed with our street, you'd help teach them a lesson? Oh boy. What happened? I explained the situation and Jim was immediately on board. You want me to bring my floodlights? We can make this a real production. Perfect. How about 5 a.m.? I'll be there with bells on. By 9 p.m., Carlos had delivered 3 pallets of bricks and a wheelbarrow. I spent the next hour moving them strategically around my property, hiding them behind trees and in my garage. To anyone watching, it just looked like I was organizing construction materials. At 11 p.m., I did a final check of Rebecca's house. The dinner party was still going strong with cars parked up and down the street. Her BMW sat smugly in my driveway like it belonged there. I set my alarm for 4:30 a.m. and went to bed with a smile on my face. The alarm felt like it went off 5 minutes after I'd closed my eyes, but I jumped up energized. This was going to be the most satisfying Saturday morning of my life. Jim arrived at exactly 5 a.m. with his truck full of portable floodlights and a thermos of coffee. You ready to build some character? He asked with a grin. Let's do this. We started by setting up the lights around my driveway, positioning them so they illuminated the work area without shining directly into anyone's windows. The last thing I wanted was to wake the whole neighborhood. This was between me and Rebecca. The plan was simple but effective. Build a decorative brick border around the perimeter of my driveway, leaving just enough space around the BMW that I wouldn't be touching it, but making it impossible for her to drive out without dismantling my landscaping project. Jim and I worked in perfect sync. He mixed mortar while I laid bricks. We started at the street edge of my driveway and worked our way back, creating a low but solid wall about 18 inches high. The bricks were interlocking landscaping blocks, designed for exactly this kind of decorative border work. The beauty of the design was its legitimacy. Anyone looking at it would see a professional quality landscape border. The fact that it happened to surround Rebecca's car was just coincidence. By 6:30 a.m., we had completed the front and sides. The BMW was now sitting in what looked like a decorative brick courtyard in the middle of my driveway. We left the back section open. I didn't want to trap the car completely, just make it very difficult to get out. Think she'll notice? Jim asked, stepping back to admire our work. Oh, she'll notice. We cleaned up our tools and put away the floodlights. By 7 a.m., everything looked perfectly normal except for the beautiful new brick border around my driveway, and the BMW that was now sitting in the middle of it like a museum exhibit. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat on my front porch to wait. The first sign of life came at 8:15 a.m. when Rebecca's front door opened and a well-dressed couple walked out, clearly heading home from the dinner party. They got in their car and drove away without noticing anything unusual. At 8:45 a.m., another couple left. Then another. At 9:20 a.m., Rebecca herself appeared, wearing running clothes and carrying a yoga mat. She was halfway to the sidewalk when she glanced toward my house and stopped dead in her tracks. I watched from my porch as her brain processed what she was seeing. First confusion, then realization, then pure, unadulterated fury. She marched over to my property line, staying carefully on the sidewalk. "Excuse me," she shouted. "What is this?" I stood up slowly, coffee cup in hand. "Oh, hi Rebecca. What's what? Don't play dumb. What did you do to my car?" "Your car? I didn't touch your car." "Technically true. I hadn't laid a finger on the BMW. You built a wall around it?" "Oh, that." I gestured casually at the brickwork. "I decided to do some landscaping. I've been planning this project for months. Sorry if the timing is inconvenient." Her face was turning an interesting shade of red. You can't trap someone's car with bricks. I didn't trap anything. It's a decorative border on my property. Your car just happens to be parked inside it. This is ridiculous. Take it down right now. I'm afraid I can't do that. See, I used quickset mortar. It needs at least 12 hours to cure properly before I can safely remove any bricks. Wouldn't want the structural integrity to be compromised. The look she gave me could have melted steel. You planned this. I planned to landscape my driveway, yes. I told you last night I needed your car moved. She pulled out her phone, fingers flying over the screen. I'm calling the police. Go ahead. It's my property, I have permits for landscaping, and I haven't damaged or touched your vehicle. 20 minutes later, Officer Martinez showed up, the same cop I'd spoken to the night before. He walked around the brick border, examined the car, and talked to both Rebecca and me. Ma'am, I understand your frustration, he told Rebecca, but this appears to be legitimate landscaping work on private property. The homeowner hasn't damaged your vehicle or violated any laws I can see. But my car is trapped. The vehicle isn't trapped, ma'am. There's an opening in the back. It would just be difficult to maneuver out. Rebecca pointed at me. He did this on purpose. Officer Martinez looked at me. Sir, when did you start this landscaping project? I've been planning it for months, officer. I started work early this morning because of the cooler temperatures. Better working conditions. He nodded and turned back to Rebecca. Ma'am, unless you can prove malicious intent, this is a civil matter. I'd recommend working something out with your neighbor. After the officer left, Rebecca stood on the sidewalk staring at her trapped BMW for another 10 minutes. I could practically see the steam coming out of her ears. Finally, she stormed back to her house. Through the windows, I could see her pacing around, phone pressed to her ear, clearly calling everyone she could think of for help. Around noon, a tow truck showed up. I watched from my window as the driver examined the situation, scratched his head, and talked to Rebecca for several minutes. Eventually, he shook his head and drove away. Apparently, even with a tow truck, there wasn't enough clearance to extract the car without damaging either the BMW or my beautiful new landscaping. The afternoon brought a parade of visitors to Rebecca's house. Family members, friends, and what looked like a contractor all came to stare at the brick border situation. A few of them wandered over to examine my work up close, and I overheard one guy telling Rebecca, honestly, it's really good craftsmanship. Professional quality. Around 3 p.m., Rebecca's husband Brad finally appeared. He was a tall, soft-looking guy who clearly wasn't used to dealing with conflict. He walked over to where I was sitting on my porch reading a book. Jake, right? I'm Brad Henderson. Listen, this has gotten out of hand. I looked up from my book. Has it? Come on, man. We made a mistake parking in your driveway. We get that. But this. He gestured at the brick border. This is kind of extreme, don't you think? Is it? Someone used my private property without permission. I improved my property with legitimate landscaping. Seems proportional to me. Brad sighed. Look, what's it going to take to resolve this? You want money? An apology? What? I want your wife to learn that other people's property isn't her personal parking lot. Okay, she gets that now. Trust me. So when can you take this down? I checked my watch. Well, like I told your wife, the mortar needs 12 hours to cure. I started around 5 a.m., so about 5 p.m. it should be safe to remove. And you'll definitely remove it then? I smiled. I'll remove it when I'm ready to remove it. This is my property after all. Brad looked like he wanted to say something else, but thought better of it and walked away. The rest of the afternoon was pure entertainment. Word had spread through the neighborhood, and people kept walking by to see the trapped car situation. Most of them thought it was hilarious. A few neighbors even stopped to compliment my brickwork. Mrs. Chun from across the street brought me a sandwich and said, about time someone taught that woman some manners. She's been nothing but trouble since she moved in. Around 4 p.m., Rebecca appeared at my property line again. This time she looked defeated rather than angry. Please, she said. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry I parked in your driveway. I'm sorry I didn't ask permission. I'm sorry I was rude to you last night. Just please let me get my car out. I stood up and walked over to her. See, now that's what I wanted to hear 12 hours ago. So you'll take it down? I checked my watch. In about an hour, the mortar will be properly cured. Then I can safely remove the bricks without compromising the structural integrity. And you will? Remove them, I mean. I will. But first, I want your word that you'll never park in my driveway again without explicit permission. You have it? Absolutely. And I want you to understand that just because we're neighbors doesn't mean my property is community property. I understand. I really do. At exactly 5 p.m., I began dismantling my beautiful brick border. Jim came over to help, and several neighbors gathered to watch the liberation of the BMW. It took about 45 minutes to carefully remove enough bricks to create a car-width opening. Rebecca practically ran to her car, started it up, and backed out so fast she left rubber marks on my driveway. As she pulled away, she rolled down her window. "This isn't over," she shouted. But it was over. And we all knew it. The next morning, I found a formal apology note in my mailbox, along with a $50 gift card to Home Depot for any landscaping expenses. The note was signed by both Rebecca and Brad, and included a promise to be more respectful of neighbors' property boundaries in the future. I used the gift card to buy a nice, no parking private driveway sign. 2 weeks later, the Hendersons put their house up for sale. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that Rebecca had been struggling to fit in with the community culture. Translation: word had gotten around about the driveway incident, and she was tired of being known as the woman who got her car trapped by bricks. The house sold within a month to a nice retired couple who introduced themselves properly and have never once parked anywhere they shouldn't. As for my driveway, I decided to keep a small section of the brick border as a permanent decorative feature. Just a low border along one side with some flowers planted behind it. It looks nice and it serves as a subtle reminder that property boundaries matter. But the best part isn't the landscaping. It's the story. Because now, whenever someone in the neighborhood gets a little too comfortable with other people's property, someone inevitably brings up the time Jake trapped Karen's car with bricks for 12 hours. And suddenly, everyone remembers to ask permission. The incident became legendary in our neighborhood, but the real satisfaction wasn't in the revenge. It was in the lesson. Sometimes people need a dramatic demonstration to understand basic respect and boundaries. Rebecca thought she could take advantage of the quiet neighbor who wouldn't cause trouble. She was half right. I didn't cause trouble, I solved it. 3 months later, at the annual HOA meeting, someone proposed a new rule about parking etiquette and property respect. It passed unanimously, and they informally named it the Brick Border Resolution. I still live in the same house, park in the same driveway, and mind my own business. But now, my driveway has never been cleaner, and my neighbors have never been more polite. Sometimes the best way to build good relationships with your neighbors is to show them exactly where the boundaries are. And sometimes those boundaries are made of brick. The moral of the story isn't about revenge, it's about respect. Respect for other people's property, respect for boundaries, and respect for the fact that kindness shouldn't be mistaken for weakness. Rebecca learned that lesson the hard way, 12 hours at a time. And my driveway? It's still mine, still private, and still has never been prettier. Because when you stand up for yourself with style, creativity, and just the right amount of pettiness, you don't just solve a problem, you create a legend. And legends, unlike unauthorized parking, last forever.